Welcome to my show, When Everyone Wins, where a key goal I have for you is shifting from power over and under to power within and between. I'm your host, Judy Ryan. In each episode, I'll share my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWorks Systems. I'll help you build trust and emotional and social intelligence. My show, When Everyone Wins, is about creating a life you love and helping others do the same. Welcome to the show today. I'm very excited to bring you a topic called creating win-win through joyful transformation. And that does not mean it's not serious and strategic. It just means how people feel makes all the difference in the transformation process. So I want you to imagine an organization with overwhelming challenges, the need to be upgraded in just about every possible way, and that the shift must be from struggling to thriving. Such an organization must be led by a transformational leader. This leader must have courage, skills, and determination to overcome challenges and inspire excellence. This leader must also bring passion and conviction to the job of improving a seriously out-of-date organization, despite the many risks, fears, and the resistance some of his staff may have about change, even when that change is designed to support advancement of a much needed nonprofit. This is the description of my guest today. He has not only been committed to bring about excellence in this now 80-year-old, I think, nonprofit organization, he has done so and continues to do so in measurable ways, all while bringing joy and research-based strategies to the transformation process. It's my great pleasure to tell you about my guest, Ron Ekstrand. I met Ron in 2020 when he took over as the president and CEO of Easter Seals, Arkansas, where he has led a multi-year culture transformation and growth strategy grounded in the service profit chain and Gallup research on employee engagement. When he arrived at Easter Seals, Arkansas in January of 2020, the organization's employee net promoter score, for those of you that may not know what that is, this is how well is the organization recommended as a great place to work. That number was negative 19. And today, with Ron's leadership, it is plus 55, reflecting a dramatic shift toward a high trust, high engagement culture where people are proud to work and serve. Under Ron's leadership, Easter Seals Arkansas aligned its entire strategy around becoming the employer of choice, the provider of choice, and the charity of choice. No high goals there as the path to long-term financial sustainability. From 20 to 25, the organization has more than doubled from about 515 employees to 1,185 employees, and has almost tripled their annual revenues from around $23 million to over $62 million, all while significantly enhancing the pay, the benefits, and ensuring competitive wages, especially for the direct support professionals. In his community living waiver program, his staff turnover is now roughly 25%, which is about half of what the national average is, demonstrating the power of culture, leadership, and investment in people. Over the past 3 years, Ron and his team have launched 5 new services, completed 95% of an $11 million capital campaign in just 1 year, and remodeled and expanded a K-12 school for children with special needs that once faced possible closure at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. That school, which once served 21 students in 2020, now supports 150 students in a new building completed in only 12 months. Easter Seals Arkansas is also preparing to build a roommate housing demonstration home, providing people with intellectual and developmental disabilities the opportunity to live with roommates of their choosing in community homes or apartments supported by remote monitoring and smart home technology. Wow. This enables them to enjoy better independence. Central to these outcomes has been the implementation of a clear organizational operating system that involves people at every level in strategic planning, annual goal setting, and execution. This is win-win. This is shared power. In addition to investing in culture, structure, the leadership development, Ron has tied success to shared rewards. Last year, every employee received a 2% bonus for helping the organization achieve its financial targets. Wow, that's got to feel good for them, especially right now at Christmas. Ron brings more than 30 years of leadership experience to his role, including over a decade within the Easter Seals network and 2 decades in managed care, insurance, healthcare, and financial services. Prior to joining Easter Seals Arkansas, he served as the Senior Vice President of Network Advancement and Affiliate Relations at the Easter Seals National Office, where he also spent 5 months as the interim CEO. Before that, he was the CEO of Touchpoint Autism Services and later the President and Chief Operating Officer of Easter Seals Midwest, where he led a major turnaround, rebranding, mergers, and an affiliation that helped create one of Missouri's largest disability service providers. He holds an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis, where he also taught highly rated graduate courses on service excellence and has taught graduate courses on nonprofit mergers and collaborations at Webster University. Ron and his wife, Deanna Lewis, who is the CEO of Easter Seals South Carolina, share 9 children and 4 grandchildren. They enjoy hiking, traveling, cooking together, exploring local eateries, playing cards, and spending time with family and friends. Woo, I think I need to go back to bed. I'm tired. That's amazing. Welcome to the show, Ron. I'm so proud and pleased to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor. Appreciate you inviting me, Judy. And I'm just blown away by all the things that you mentioned. In preparing for the interview, I am so focused on what's next. Sometimes I forget what's been accomplished.
Yes.
And I was talking to one of my leaders this morning, and I said, if I look back at where we started and where we're at today, it's like we're a whole different organization, still with the same fundamental core values, mission, but the way we operate and the way people are engaged, it truly is a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? People are longing for win-win because it almost feels like win-lose is hanging on with a death grip in many places, especially in the United States right now. So I'm glad that you looked back and you could see what you've accomplished because it's easy to overlook that. And that's part of what motivates us to keep moving forward is celebrating what you've done. So tell the audience a little bit about how you feel now versus when everything was so hard in the beginning, as far as, all the needs.
Well, at the beginning, I didn't know exactly where we were. I came to an organization that had a really good, solid reputation, strong financial footing. Uh, I had been in other organizations where I was involved with a complete financial turnaround. So we were not in a situation where we had to look at making cuts to survive or anything like that. It was a good place to start. Um, but I had been given a mandate to grow and to serve more people and to expand the mission and expand the impact. And we had started to go down the path of really doing a strategic plan. We had engaged consultants and they were ready to start. I started 2.5 months before COVID, and then COVID hit, and the pandemic changed the world. And so I went from being focused on growth and expansion and culture to looking at just survival. Um, and we used COVID as an opportunity to really rally around 3 main principles. We were in, you know, uncharted territory, and we said these are the 3 principles that are going to guide all our decision making. We're going to make sure, first of all, our top priority is keeping people healthy and safe. So we deployed immediately protocols, um, including requiring vaccines. We were quick to respond to any potential outbreaks. Um, Second was we want to make sure everyone, all of our jobs are protected, that we don't lose anyone as a result of us having to make cuts in any of our programs. So we had to get really creative about funding. And the last was the financial survival of the organization. And we ended up, I think, stronger afterwards, but it was a slog to go through. Um, we lost no one. We lost no jobs. And financially, during those years with one-time COVID money, we ended up being net positive for those years. So there was no financial loss that we had to tap into reserves for. How I feel today, really, I'm looking back now in reflection and realize we've come such a long way. We are really doing things different than a lot of other folks are in a way that makes a difference and makes an impact, um, not only on the lives of the people that work for us, but also the people that we serve, helping to foster independence, choice of where people live, helping create pathways to work and employment for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And to me, that's the most important thing, the why we exist as an organization in the first place. Our mission is to help people live, learn, work, and play in their communities, people with disabilities. So um, I look back with pride. I'm happy where we're at. What I look for in the future is, you know, retirement is on the horizon for me, and I'm all about now thinking about succession planning and transition and developing the people to give my board the option for who can carry the mission forward when I'm gone. So
Yeah.
um, it's been quite the journey, um, and it's had its ups and downs. But for the most part, when we look back, we are so uh, excited not only about how close we've come to achieving the goals of employer, provider, and charity of choice, um, but also just on the impact of the lives of the people that we serve.
Yes. Yes, that's the provider of choice. And you were tested in fire, so you have such a legacy to be proud of when you leave. Good thing that you're not always in the office, or they'd probably shackle you to the desk and say, "No retirement. You don't need to be doing all that." So I love that you have been given kind of the graduate course on not only surviving but thriving. So tell the listeners a little bit about what mentors have helped you the most to become the leader that you are, that is a transformational leader.
Yeah, I was thinking about that question. Um, One of my most impactful people in my life was a professor that I had, um, who was he taught quality and operations, um, and I was we had had a course on sort of personal development. It was a course all of the MBA students were required to take. And then they talked about the importance of mentors. And I remember coming to him because I really admired him, his style, the joy he brought to what he did, his insights, his people focus. And I said, Dean, would you be willing to be my mentor? And he said no. And I'm like, oh, I think I was like heartbroken. Well, why not? He goes, how about if we just be friends? Because mentor implies that I'm the one doing all the teaching and you're going to be the one doing all the learning. And I think we have a lot to learn from each other. And I loved that approach. That was not a I know more than you approach. It was let's learn together. We have things to learn from each other. His name was Dean Kropp. Unfortunately, he passed a number of years ago. But he influenced the way I thought about even just the idea of mentorship, the idea that it's more a partnership and a coaching of back and forth and learning from each other and being open to learning. Um, Another mentor of mine was a friend named Marlowe, who had he was a psychologist and an organizational consultant that really talked about the importance and understanding of accepting personal responsibility. He had a great phrase that he used a lot that I've embraced, and it was due to circumstances beyond my control, I've been left in charge of myself. How about you? Because a lot of
Oh,
times people want to blame others or point the finger at others with respect to in particular, like the language we use about how we feel about things. You make me angry, you make me happy, you make me sad. But when you realize that those external stimuli really and other people don't have that control over you, that you can't necessarily control what's happening to you, but you can control your response. And there's always a silver lining. There's always a way to make sense out of something bad that's happened. There's always a way to look for um, how to creatively solve the problem with the resources you have and not just give in and accept the status quo. And the last person I would mention as an influential mentor of mine would be my wife. My wife is also CEO of Easter Seals, South Carolina, and we both spend a lot of time working from home. I mentioned earlier that her office is in the kitchen on the kitchen counter. And a lot of times we will bounce ideas off of each other and share challenges that we're faced with. We did that during COVID. We do that all of the time, day in and day out. And it's nice to have someone who's also sort of a peer in a chair doing the same thing that you are to learn from each other. And she's been a great mentor of mine as well.
Isn't that wonderful that you can say that about your wife? And also, when I'm thinking about what you were saying about the first mentor, I think you said his name was Dean, right?
Yep, Dean Kropp, Professor Dean
Dean,
Kropp.
I love how I can see why you and I were drawn to work together, because in our model, it's about breaking down those artificial barriers and creating that shared power, which is friendship and it is mutual. It's not that top-down kind of relationship. And we all have things we can learn. I mean, I've learned some of my greatest lessons from my own children. And then when you talked about Marlowe, I mean, our model is called, it's based on responsibility. I hope that we pull from what you said to put in quote what his quote was, because I just love that quote. And it is everything, because if we are not managing ourselves, we can't really be very helpful in helping other people to find their way.
Yeah.
So I love it. I mean, you're really a model for shared power and win-win dynamics. And you had people that helped you get there as
And
well.
one other point with Marlowe that in that same vein, like Dean, Marlowe also taught courses at Washington University in I think the health management program, as well as the evening MBA program. And his course was titled something along the lines of effective self-management. And at the beginning, he would start his first session by saying, um, I am not your teacher, but that doesn't mean you can't learn. And he said, I can't force you to learn anything. And he would do a little exercise where he would ask all the members of the class, how many of you are managers? And half the class would raise the hand. And then he would look at the other half and say, well, what about you? Do you not manage anything? And and they'd be like, no, I don't have any people reporting to me. These are evening MBA class, students that are trying to get a degree. And said, well, then who's managing you? Who's in charge of you? And that whole idea of, look, I'm going to give you some ideas that you can learn from, but I can't teach you anything. I am not a teacher. I'm here to facilitate your learning by sharing these ideas that maybe you find useful. So I'm going to lay out sort of the smorgasbord of ideas and concepts, but it's up to you whether you learn or not. And it changes the whole dynamic when you think about who is actively the one managing themselves and who's the one that's actively having to do the learning. You can't force people to do either of those things.
Totally agree. In fact, that's why one of the phrases that most rankles me is we're going to hold each other accountable. No, you're not, because it's an inside job.
Yes.
And what you're really describing is if you don't see yourself as not necessarily, well, managing your own life for sure, but even a leader, if you don't see that, then you're going to stay in that passive role within your own life and within the life of a community, whether it's a workplace or a neighborhood. And I love how you talked about managing, self-managing, or Marlowe did, because, in emotional intelligence, people love the self-awareness part and they love the social awareness part. we always call that the cupcakes at the party. They don't so much like the management part of it, which we call the vegetables at the party.
Yeah.
So we need all of it. We need the joy of transformation. We need the joy of self-management, but we also need the hard work of it. And that's what I hear you were learning from him, and that he was doing that transfer of responsibility to people so that they pick it up and they don't look at themselves as passive in their lives. Love that. And in fact, that reminds me of a story that you told me about your son when we were in a session together and we were talking about the harmful effects of having to be motivated from the outside in with rewards. And you said, "Oh, that's like Alfie Kohn's work." And I said, "That's what we use." And then you told that story about your son. Would you tell that story to your audience?
Sure. Yeah. Alfie Kohn's book, Punished by Rewards, was very influential in my thinking about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And I believe all motivation comes from within. You can help create an environment that leads to what feels like more self-motivation. But my son, I think he was in second grade, and the teacher was calling up students for end of the year awards. Um, I think it was end of the semester because then we shortly thereafter had a conference, parent-teacher conference, or the teacher filled me in on this. Called up Aaron and gave Aaron the award for, I think it was best math student. And Aaron, halfway back to his chair, um, stopped, turned around, gave her back the piece of paper and said, "I don't really need this." Said, "I like math. I'm good at math, and that's good enough for me. I don't need your reward. I don't need this
Yes.
acknowledgement." Um,
Well,
but if you
Ron,
think about
what
it,
I love and appreciate about that regarding you is that you were already teaching a second grader son of yours that what he thinks about life is more important than what anyone else thinks about him. And that was strengthening the joy of math instead
Mhm.
of the joy of getting people pleasing.
Right.
And I think that is a really powerful sign of a transformational leader that says your power is important and it is sacred. So,
Yeah, I view the role of being a leader as creating the environment that's safe, that allows people to flourish and to question the status quo and to be creative and to be fully engaged at work. I mean, you spend a third of your life at work. Wouldn't it be nice to go to a place where you feel like you belong, you're appreciated, your voice matters, and you have a say in what's important and how we're going to go about solving problems, right? And
yeah.
improving things.
Yeah. I remember one time one of my kids said to me, "Mom, I wish I had your work ethic because I'm kind of a workaholic, but I love what I do." And I said, "You are. You do have my work ethic." And she goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You stay up all night long to play video games." And she goes, "But that's fun." And I said, "When you create a life where you love what you do and you're internally motivated, you don't look at the clock and say, 'Oh, when can I stop?'" And that's what I think that's why I love it that we titled this all about joyful transformation, because it isn't about just drudging through the day. And I suspect you're doing a lot of that without even conscious awareness because your employees are showing up and staying and giving good marks to Easter Seals, Arkansas. Can you tell me a little bit more about the workplace stories that indicate the happiness and the joy that your people have overall?
Yeah, I think the the best indicator of like sort of improvement of culture and engagement has been two key sort of metrics that we monitor. One is our net promoter score. You mentioned it had gone from a minus 19 to a positive 55 as a place to work, which is translated into a net promoter score of a plus 77 for the people that we serve and their families and their guardians, recommending us as a place to get service. Um, you know, I see that our company has created our own sort of employee appreciation committee and culture. We've got staff that meet and identify who we're going to recognize and acknowledge and celebrate. Um, looking at sort of what are the scheduled things like boss's day or therapy, OT therapy, therapist day, or disability employment month. We do a lot of identifying of uh, the unique roles and responsibilities that people have within the organization, and then celebrate them. We have processes within our staff newsletter for everyone to give each other like kudos and recognition, a way to just thank people for going above and beyond. Um, and our team really does a great job of helping each other. At our most recent, I can remember when we implemented our operating system, I mentioned that earlier, and it's based on this idea of the employee operating or the entrepreneurial operating system, uh, also known as EOS or traction.
Mhm.
And we adapted it for ourselves, which you think is kind of odd. But what do you mean entrepreneurial operating system within a large nonprofit? The theory behind that was that each one of our directors who are running programs or support departments are the CEO of their own business or the executive director of their own business, and they're responsible for everything. Um, which means they also get to make the decisions within certain parameters. They can't go out and develop or create or buy their own software because the software needs to be used by everyone. But we can't have some people using Google and some people using Microsoft. But within certain limits, they pretty much have ownership of their area. And I can remember when we did our first planning session, I don't know that anyone in the organization knew each other really well or knew what other departments did. Um, they weren't involved in even anything regarding strategic planning, and they definitely didn't have any input in the budget. And at the last session, what I witnessed when we were having each area do their presentations was they were talking about how they're partnering with each other, how they're working with each other, they're learning from each other. The school that we just brought on campus, it had been off campus, the academy, is now located on our main campus that also has a preschool, an adult center that has 10 adults that live there full time and what's called a long-term care center or intermediate long-term care center. And then there's our children's rehab center that also has 40 residents that also go to school there. And all of them coordinated to have a trunk or treat for Halloween. It was like instead of them doing their own thing, it's like there was this new energy on the campus, and we brought all of the programs together, and all of the children together, and all of the families and the PTOs together. We call them PTTOs because it's the parent teacher therapist organizations. Um, and there's really the sense of community and culture and working together that uh, I think is a testament to that transformation that has occurred. There's really a sense of teamwork, co collaboration, and I'm not controlling that, suggesting that. That's just emerging from people being allowed to have the ability to make decisions and to work together and to learn from each other.
You know what, Ron? You're not controlling it, but you have influenced it. What's so interesting about you started by saying that your people are doing recognition, consciously, intentionally doing recognition, which is one of the 8 values that build trust. And when we do that, it helps people to really reattach to their sense of meaningfulness, which is the first intrinsic motivator that they need to stay motivated from the inside out. And when you talk about using the EOS process with your different directors, because they're kind of the CEOs of their own segments, their own departments, in a sense, then they model every person being the CEO of their own life, which is what LifeWorks Systems does in our fully distributive, leadership development. And then when you talked about them doing the trunk or treat, you're really describing the groups are moving from that idea of we're just doing something because it's the task to having a purpose behind the task, and to help everybody feel successful, wildly successful together. So I just love it that you are building and have built the legacy, because control would ruin it. You're influencing it, you're modeling it. And it's beautiful to hear those stories.
Yeah, there's this other concept about also how you show up matters, that leaders sort of bring the weather or they set the tone.
Yes.
And if you show up coming from a fear-based place or a control-based place or a micromanagement perspective where you have to have your hands in everything, it erodes trust, it erodes ownership, it erodes joy. It really is, I think, important for leaders um, to model what it is you're looking for and to have the right mindset and attitude and the approach that you take. Um, if you always see the glass half empty and are negative about everything, it's really hard to bring to the table your full engaged self that allows others to also uh, express their happiness and their ideas and their joy. So
Yes.
I think it's important that it's so important how leaders show up that we've made that investment in our leadership. As I think about how we got to where we are, yes, we made changes in compensation and benefits, but you can't pay people enough to stay in an organization where their immediate supervisor is a tyrant or is someone who is counterproductive or a micromanager or someone that just uh, constantly says no to new ideas. And so, in our internal survey, you mentioned our Net Promoter Score. We also do a survey of how people feel supported. And we've been doing that since I got here. And we measure on a scale of 1 to 10 their level of satisfaction with all sorts of support areas, including the executive team as a support area, accounting, IT, HR, building services, marketing and development. But we also ask their immediate supervisor, how satisfied are you with the support you're getting from your immediate supervisor? And we first started asking that those scores were in the high sevens on a scale of 1 to 10. Now they are consistently above 9, and they are the top rated internal support area. We have taught our leaders how to be more effective by working on things like emotional intelligence, empowerment, involvement, in engaging people where they're at, and listening. So to us, the Gallup poll research shows the number one reason most people leave an organization is their immediate supervisor. So we made a wise strategic investment in giving our leaders the skills they need to be able to be more effective at managing their areas.
Ron, what I love about what you're saying, and for our audience, is that we need more models of win-win. And what you're describing is win-win for everybody. Win-win for the people you serve, win-win for the employees. What I also find really helpful is when you talk about the leadership is bringing the weather. You know, to me, we talked a little bit at the beginning about calling this a joyful transformation, like it somehow could diminish the serious advantage, competitive advantage, and power of a transformation. But to me, creating a joyful transformation is one of the most effective and intelligent strategies an organization could choose to do. When I first stated the mission of LifeWorks Systems, which was to create a world where everyone loves their lives. Marketing people said, "Oh, you don't want that. It's too lovey-dovey. It's kind of, seems a little wonky and overly feminine or something." And I realized I don't want to work with people that don't want their employees to love their lives, because they also said the leaders don't always care if people love their lives. And I thought, well, that's pretty awful. But, recently I had a nephew die unexpectedly. He was only 35.
Mm.
And it really made me look again more closely at what is success. And what is success is how we make people feel. And you're right, people will leave an organization even if you throw a ton of money at them if they don't feel cared for. I forget who said it, but people need to know you care. And so creating a transformation that is intelligent and strategic and investing in people is an act of courage because it's not widely fostered, promoted, modeled, supported. That's why win-lose is still not, it's still more mainstream than win-win. So you having an organization that serves so importantly in the world, that is modeling win-win and all of the effects of it is incredibly powerful. I just want to state that for the record.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And it's we talk about this service profit chain. I sort of adapted that. It came from an HBR article in a book. I think the individual's name was Heskett who wrote it. I think it was James Heskett. But the idea is that if you want to have good financial results, it's really hard to directly affect that. That you have to go upstream. How do you get good financial results? Well, it comes from having loyal customers, people that repeat business and refer you, and you get positive word of mouth. So it reduces your marketing expense and your cost of doing business, and it allows you to charge a premium. Well, we can't really charge a premium because we are a nonprofit and the state sets our rate. So we have to work on how do we make the most of the dollars that we've got, and we can supplement that. So we added an element of being the charity of choice in between there. So if we're doing a good job of taking care of the members and the people that we serve, our clients and their families, then that's going to increase the likelihood of us getting donations and support. Keep going further up the chain. Well, how do you get great services? Well, you can't have great services if you have constant turnover and you don't have people that care. So you've got to create that culture and be that employer of choice, to be the provider of choice. And so we have focused intentionally, even when COVID hit, on what do we do to create this culture, this great place to work mindset, where we do pay people competitively. We do creative things with regard to benefits, but we also provide growth opportunities, learning opportunities, good leadership, the culture that engages, opportunities to have input in the planning process, in the process. And, we were fortunate that we've improved that culture so that we developed, for example, using the academy as an example. COVID hit, it was financially underwater, losing money, 21 students. The board recommended, let's keep it open one more year. And in a year's time, we went from 21 students to 40 students, and then to 55 the next year, to 75, to where we had a wait list. And we went to the state and we asked the state for money to renovate a building. We were using offsite a building that one of our board members had that she owned, and we couldn't really build or expand there. But we needed a bigger building, and we had a building on campus that we wanted to renovate. We got the single largest gift that we are aware of in Arkansas history from the state to renovate the building to serve the wait lists. And this fall, from August of last year to August of this year, we went from serving 75 students in 2 locations to serving 150 in that one location, got the whole building done. We started a capital campaign last year about this time, and we're now 96% of the way funded. I was talking to my vice president of development just this morning, and we have $370,000 left on our $10.25 million campaign, 96% fundraised, and we have a phase 2 launching with respect to the roommate housing. The support that we've gotten from the community, people want to invest in something that's successful. And when they're hearing the stories of the families that we're impacting, because we're able to keep and retain and recruit the talent we need to deliver those results, we get support that allows us to then reinvest in the front of that chain. It it's a powerful, it's a very powerful, uh, statistically, mathematically, financially proven model.
Yes.
And a lot of times leaders get so focused on the bottom line. Well, what do you do? What are your levers there? I can increase prices, but if you don't have exceptional service, it's hard to do that. Or I could cut costs. Well, if you're in the service business, your number one cost is employee benefits and salaries. So if you're cutting people, you're creating an environment where people are afraid whether they're going to still have a job. So if you think about that holistically, to really get the good financial results, you got to focus on the front end of that chain because you're not going to get great results for your customers, the people that you're there to serve, if you're not providing great results for the people that work there.
Ron, I love it because you're tying the financial abundance to putting purpose, people, and principles or values above profit. It doesn't mean profit doesn't matter. It just means profit shows up and is more
Exactly.
sustained as a result of putting those things first.
And
You
as a
talked.
I was
Oh,
going to
sorry.
mention, as a nonprofit, you think, oh, well, you don't have to have a profit. And I have actually talked to my team openly about this. Look, nonprofit is not a goal of ours. We have to have a profit. It's like we have to eat, we have to breathe, we have to exercise, we have to sleep. If we don't have a profit, we don't exist. It's a requirement, but that's not why we exist. The profit allows us to do our mission and fulfill the goals that we have to have impact in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Alfie Kohn says, um, pay your people well, but then help them forget about the pay part. And that's the beauty of a nonprofit that is profitable, is we're not ultra focused on huge wins for just the CEO or the shareholders. We're really about the service. And one of the things that you said was that, you have to be able to go upstream to give good service. And I see that you do that with creating that psychological safety. Like you said, you don't want to start cutting people because then people feel stressed out and scared and like it's unsafe and they have to be perfect and they're afraid to take any risks. So it's all so backwards the way the majority of the world operates. And that's why we talk about shifting power over and power under to power within and power between, because that's what you're describing. Not only power between and within internally as the provider or the employer of choice, but with the community as the charity of choice and with the provider of choice with serving your direct clients. I mean, it's the beauty that's built into those. I hope that you're actually getting the recognition for those three things because it's clear that you have put your money where your mouth is on working toward those ends.
Yeah,
Have you?
we just recently applied for the Arkansas. Last year, we applied for and received the first level out of four levels. It's based on the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, and we received the first level, the first IDD provider in the state to be level one, sort of certified for quality in the state. The other thing that I want to highlight is that this translates also into business results, and we are proving with results. With one of the managed care companies that we are with, probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, the state outsourced the running of uh, the waiver program. That's the home and community-based services where people, instead of living in an institution, they live at home or they live in a group home. We don't necessarily abide by their group homes because people don't get to choose who they live with. Instead, we were trying to match people with the roommate housing program that you had mentioned earlier. But um, because of negotiations with other managed care entities, we ended up only being in network with one. And when that happened during open enrollment of last year, 85% of our members, when they were given the chance to switch managed care companies, switched to keep our services. That kind of brand loyalty proved that their relationship is not with the managed care company, but with their IDD provider. And the level of quality of services that we are providing is so strong and powerful that their loyalty was to us, not to the payor. Um, while with this managed care company, we were also recently given data that showed how we performed as an entity versus how all of the other providers did. We don't know how each provider itself did, but collectively. And um, our medical loss ratio, that is the percent of money spent on us as well as medical services, um, was about a 14-point advantage. So we are producing better outcomes for managed care than our competitors are, and the data proves it, that the model in the system works, and we're paying more and costing less.
Yeah.
We're paying on average almost $18 an hour, and most of our competition is paying between $12.50 and $14 an hour. And we did that during COVID with one-time employee retention credit funds and have then subsequently been able to sustain it through rates that were that allowed us to do that with this one managed care company. The other managed care companies would not negotiate rates that would allow us to continue. But the data is showing that there is a connection as well, that the overall cost, for example, the medical spend is almost 10 points better, that our costs are 10 points less because the people that they get a capitated amount, they get a flat rate for every person, and then they contract with providers and doctors and that to provide the services. What they're finding is that the people that we serve are happier, healthier, and require less use of medical resources because they are more engaged in their life. We're developing independence. The roommate housing program is a great example where we have taken a survey that is designed for freshmen who are going off to college for the first time and they have to live with a roommate. So it's what are your preferences? What do you like? What do you don't like? So we use that with the families and the individuals we're serving to see what their preferences are and try to match them up with other people that want to live more independently on their own, not living at home with mom and dad. And they don't want to go into an institution and they don't want to go to a group home where they don't know anybody and they don't get to choose who they live with. And then we're applying remote support, enabling technology so that they can. And what we found is the first 20 people, they are engaged in the community. They have volunteer jobs. They have employment. They have roommates now of their choosing. They're happier. And that model, I think, is something that is replicatable, not just in Arkansas, but it's potentially replicatable across the country.
Ron, I just feel like all through this, even this most recent story, it is such a powerful testimony about joyful transformation because you're caring about the people you're serving, that they are having a happy, easy to adjust to experience as they're changing their lives and growing more independent. And I also can't help but think about the connection between how much retention you have within your employees, because that's another financial dot on the line. And I appreciate that you're connecting that because not everybody can see the entire puzzle and how all of these pieces are related. And you're kind of tying those, connecting those dots for people. Hopefully, a lot of managed care and healthcare organizations are listening today and understanding what's possible that maybe they haven't focused on as the pathway
Yeah.
through.
Well, that service profit chain is so powerful. I built a whole course at WashU in the MBA program around the service profit chain um, called Service Excellence. And literally, I'm using that concept as the framework um, for running the organization. And if you think about the pillars of employer, provider, and charity of choice, and to get financial sustainability, it's literally lined up on that. The one other thing that we've done, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, there's another concept out there like the employee or the entrepreneurial operating system, and it's called the Great Game of Business. And the concept behind the Great Game of Business is really about open book management. It was based out of a company founded in Springfield, Missouri. And the idea is to share the financial information with everybody. So we have started having regular town halls where we share financial information. tied everyone's opportunity for a bonus to achieving collectively our financial results. So everyone had a stake in the game. They already had a voice in how to improve things, but now we're sharing detailed financial information so that they are a part of it and understanding how the day-to-day choices they make can impact the bottom line, which then benefits everybody. And again, we don't exist to make a profit, but we have to have a profit in order to fuel the model, right? So that's been
You
a
know
nice
what's so
addition.
powerful about what you're saying is it's another practical application of a value that builds trust, which is disclosure.
Right.
And also, when you're disclosing and you're collaborating effectively, you can create these new ways to create more revenue, create more service. It reminds me of a company that we worked with in healthcare where they were almost like Gestapo-like. The corporation at the headquarters would have these watches where the physical therapists and all of that would have to track all of their billable hours, or they'd get a slap on the wrist, and it was just terrifying. And instead, we helped them to come together and collaborate for how they could supportively help everybody raise their billable hours in a collaborative way, not a competitive way. And so what I hear you describing with all of the different practices is the opposite of what causes inferiority complex. You're causing confidence. You're causing a sense of reassurance that people are good. We always have that saying, of course, in life work systems, that all people are great. And if they're not acting great, it's usually a system problem. And so you have systematically changed a lot of the conventional system problems.
Yes.
So I know we're getting close to the end, Ron, and I'm not saying we need to quite wrap up, but what else would you like to share since we're down to about our last 5 minutes?
Well, I think that in terms of my view of the organization and sort of what my role is, I'm shifting from being a builder and an architect to figuring out how to transfer knowledge. I've got 8 members, now 9 members of my executive team. 4 of us are within 3 to 4 years of retirement. So now that we've built this amazing culture and organization and system together, we're being really intentional about planning for what's next and how do we hand the reins off to the next generation. So the idea of succession planning, leadership development, those are extraordinarily important concepts to really define sort of in the context of the what the organization needs. What are those leadership competencies and capabilities that we're looking for, and how do we develop them? One of the most powerful things that I think was a lesson learned for me is that we're all wired a little bit differently, um, and that any opportunity to learn more about how other people are motivated, they're wired, what's important to them, what their personality is, how they approach problem solving, how they want to hear and receive information, and appreciating those differences, then you don't assume that the other person is just being difficult because they're not just like you. And I think that's one of the most insightful things. Again, there's a book written on it called First Break All the Rules and what great leaders do differently or great managers do differently. And that is they don't follow the golden rule. They don't treat everyone the way you want to be treated. You treat them the way they want to be treated. And that
Right.
means you got to get to know the other person. And how you treat one person is not the same as the way you want to treat someone else because it's not how they want to be talked to, or that's not how they want to absorb information. As you know, don't send me a 10-page email with all sorts of information. I like the bottom line. And so I like to have 3 or 4 bullet points that summarize what's going on. And then if I want detail, I get detail, or I need to see pictures and trends, and I want to see the graph, not just a table of data. And it's important to know that about your team.
Yes, yes. And as you're talking about succession, I want to just ask a question, two final questions. One is, as you know, the reason why we have a consistent, scalable, sustainable model for leadership development in everyone is because it is difficult when the leaders are holding all of that knowledge base and then they leave. So it is important to succession, just like it is raising good skills within your children. So I want to ask you if you could just speak for a moment about what you were able to gain from working with LifeWorks Systems, which is kind of a self-serving question.
Yes.
And then I would like to wrap up with words that you want to leave our audience today about
Yes.
a win-win culture transformation.
So with respect to LifeWorks Systems, we had our entire team go through that. And you were the first person who was allowed into our community because we were very protective post-COVID, as COVID was sort of winding down. Um, and I think that the frameworks and the theory was great, but the tools, the exercises, the understanding of our personal differences, you brought a tool to the table that helped us reinforce that we're not all wired the same and that we don't need information in the same way. And it was a fun exercise. And what's interesting is I just brought on staff, a new chief of staff, to help with succession planning and transition of information and knowledge. And we're getting back to the idea of our executive team needs to create a team charter. We've maybe had a little bit of drift, and I'm seeing that. And it's like, okay, let's do a little fine tuning. And we're going to go back to some of those main principles and tools and ideas that we got from working with you, and going to embed that into the way we do things in our charter. The idea of win-win, the power of people and believing in people and sharing the power and creating an environment where everyone has a voice really pays off in the long run, because I could make all the decisions, but then I become a 2-inch pipe, and that's not scalable. That doesn't foster growth. I think at the end of the day, the real role of a leader is to create future leaders. And so having a process whereby you are investing in your team so they can lead it in the future not only helps you in the present, but it also prepares you for transition down the road. And I think those two things are intimately related, and LifeWorks Systems is a great way to invest in your leadership team and the future of your organization.
Thank you, Ron. You've been listening to When Everyone Wins, where we're shifting power over and under to power within and between. I'm Judy Ryan, your transformation talk radio host. Tune in each second and fourth Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time to learn new concepts and tools and listen to conversations I have with thought leaders and change agents. You'll also see real-world applications of what I'm covering so that you experience the power of the concepts and tools I share. In each episode, I bring you my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWorks Systems. I invite you to call in with your unique stories and questions. The path to ensure that everyone wins depends on our ability as people to create a life we love and help others do the same. For more information, visit lifeworksystems.com.